The worldwide food crisis is very real. According to conventional wisdom, supposedly, our food crunch is a temporary glitch. Because grain shortages are being caused by many factors, new demand for biofuel refineries, drought in Australia, among many other things. But could the pain really last? Some say eventually drought will go away. Biofuels programs will be reined in. Farmers will plant more acres and boost global supplies, just as they have always been doing during shortages. Food may never again be dirt cheap, but could prices for key crops swing back to a more moderate line? It's a very comforting picture, to be sure. But for anyone wondering where food prices are really headed, the news that Beijing has begun buying up farmland in Africa and South America offers a very troubling hint. When China began acquiring oil fields in the 1990s, it signaled both the end of China's self-sufficiency in oil and the start of a competition between China and other big oil importers that helped push crude prices to their current record levels. And now that the world's most populous nation is trying to lock up pieces of foreign food production, not only confirms that China has reached the end of food self-sufficiency as well, but suggests that the world's hopes for a quick end to today's food price crisis could be very overly optimistic. But as Beijing's real estate spree suggests, food prices are being driven now by deeper, more fundamental factors that won't be solved very easily. For one, food demand is soaring. It's surging. Consider how quickly food demand is accelerating. How about the idea that the developing world is rich enough to eat more meat? But the real story here isn't that global meat consumption will more than double in the next few decades. It's that each pound of extra meat will require, on average, at least 6 more pounds of livestock feed, meaning we'll need to substantially boost our grain output. And that's a real problem, because even as demand soars, traditional methods for increasing supply are losing their punch, are just not working very well anymore. No longer can farmers boost grain output simply by plowing up more land. Most of the world's easily or readily farmable acres are already in crops, in food production, or in ethanol production, or biofuels. And what remains is performing other useful functions. In fact, the earth is actively losing farmland. That's not good. To erosion, overgrazing, and more development. Even in the USA, the spread of suburbs, malls, and more golf courses costs us nearly 2 acres of farmland for each birth or new immigrant. For example, a farm built on cheap oil suffers when crude oil prices quadruple or more. But the larger problem might be the soaring price for natural gas, the main ingredient for synthetic fertilizer. It's been calculated that 40% of the world's calories are now produced with synthetic nitrogenous fertilizers. The idea that we can somehow get through the next few decades and feed billions and billions of more people with fertilizers 2 to 3 times above or more above today's prices. Doesn't sound quite right. An expensive fertilizer is just the start. To grow a ton of grain, you need up to 1,000 tons of water, which means our grain farmers must somehow find as much as 1 trillion extra tons of water, and this from a planet already seriously depleting or overdrawn on its water accounts. Nearly, or approximately 1/6 of the population of China and India are fed now using amounts of water that can't possibly be sustained. Some nations have even resorted to importing grain and soybeans rather than grow it themselves to save their water. But this stopgap temporary approach can't help hold off more shortages to come. According to the International Water Management Institute, future farmers will need at least 17% more water than the world now has available. Just as nations compete for oil, China's move into foreign farms suggests competition for water isn't far off. There's only so much water to go around. There's only so much cropland or farmland. You can only have so many people on the planet Earth before things really start falling apart. And then, of course, there's climate, global warming, climate change. Even conservative estimates suggest that in places such as Africa, where food output is already suffering, climatic shifts could make key crops, say wheat, entirely impossible to grow. But the real story might be the damage done to grain powerhouses such as the USA and Europe, where an anticipated jump in extreme weather events could hurt crop yields and erode or take away our power to export. Yep, this world is really serious about avoiding more of the same or a repeat in today's food crisis. The world will need to significantly boost research in areas such as crop science, water conservation, and natural fertilizers. And just as the world's economy is drifting into recession, perhaps worse, depression, that's going to make it hard. And just as important, we'll need to recognize today's food crisis, what it is, not some once-in-a-lifetime perfect storm, but an early, yes, the beginning of the warning of the challenges ahead. And there are many challenges ahead, yes. These are more signs of end times, last days, or actually end times, transition days. Things, they're going to have to change. The signs are everywhere. In the weather, in the politics, in the news. And these are more signs, and there are many.